For most of modern European aviation history, one city defined what dominance meant. London was not just a destination, it was a system built on concentration, on premium traffic, on the belief that if you control Heathrow, you control the Atlantic. On the belief that if you control the air, you control the world. On the belief that if you control Heathrow, you control the Atlantic. For decades, that system worked flawlessly. Airlines funneled passengers through a single fortress hub. Corporate demand filled the front cabins. High yields justified high costs. And British Airways stood at the center of that structure. So when market conditions began to shift, it didn't look like a crisis. It looked manageable, temporary. It wasn't a collapse. It wasn't a loud failure. Aircraft were full. The brand remained strong. The numbers still worked, on paper. And yet something was already changing, quietly, almost invisibly. While British Airways defended its fortress, KLM was designing a different kind of network. And the world that once rewarded concentration was beginning to reward flexibility. To understand what KLM was quietly building, you first have to understand what British Airways had been defending for decades. British Airways is not just a national carrier, it is a structural product of Heathrow. London Heathrow is not just another major European airport. It is one of the most capacity-constrained global hubs in the world. Runway expansion has been debated for years. Political resistance remains strong. Slots are limited, regulated, and extraordinarily valuable. Scarcity changes economics. When airport capacity is constrained, frequency becomes power. When frequency is constrained, control over slots becomes leverage. And when you have leverage, you can defend yields. British Airways built its dominance on exactly that reality. Instead of spreading capacity across multiple hubs, BA concentrated its strength in a single fortress airport. Heathrow became the center of gravity. Everything converged there. Everything flowed through it. The model was simple. Collect passengers from across the UK and Europe. Concentrate them in London. Deploy wide-body aircraft on dense, premium-oriented long-haul routes. Maximize yield, not volume. The North Atlantic became the foundation. London, New York, London, Boston, London, Washington, London, Chicago, London, Los Angeles. These were not just popular routes. They were structurally critical corporate corridors. Finance, consulting, law, technology. Business class demand on these routes was not seasonal tourism, but contracted, repeat traffic. And that distinction matters. Corporate contracts create predictability. Predictability justifies high operating costs. High yields justify a large share of premium cabins. Premium cabins justify the cost of Heathrow slots. It was a self-reinforcing system. Slot constraints at Heathrow prevented competitors from easily flooding the market with additional frequencies. That meant British Airways did not always need to win on price. It could win on frequency, corporate relationships, and brand strength. In stable economic periods, that concentration creates impressive efficiency. Wide-body aircraft depart with heavily filled premium cabins. Connecting traffic fills the economy cabin. High fares offset the expensive operating environment at Heathrow. Scale creates bargaining power. The fortress model works when demand is strong and concentrated. But concentration is not the same as diversification. When a system is built around one airport, one type of demand, and one key geography, flexibility narrows. Heathrow does not become cheaper during downturns. Slot scarcity does not disappear when premium demand weakens. Aircraft configured for heavy business traffic cannot instantly transform into tourism-optimized layouts. And over time, subtle shifts began to appear. Corporate travel growth slowed compared to pre-2020 expectations. Hybrid work reduced the frequency of business trips in some sectors. Leisure demand recovered quickly, but it is more price-sensitive. Yield volatility increased. None of these shifts broke the model overnight. Heathrow remained full. British Airways remained profitable. The Atlantic remained busy. On paper, the structure still looked intact, but the margin for error became thinner. When premium demand softens even slightly, highly concentrated models feel it first. When fuel prices rise, large wide-body aircraft amplify cost pressure. When geopolitical or economic shocks hit specific markets, dependence on dense corridors becomes visible. That is the paradox of fortress hubs. In good times, they amplify strength. In unstable times, they amplify pressure. British Airways did not build a flawed strategy. It built a concentrated one, optimized for a world where premium demand was predictable, corporate flows were stable, and slot scarcity protected yields. And for many years, that was exactly the world. The question is not whether British Airways understood the risks. The question is whether the market it was built for is still the one we are entering. Because when an airline's structural advantage depends on concentration, even small shifts in demand can have disproportionately large consequences. And when a system is built around density, adaptation becomes expensive. It is in this context that KLM's strategy begins to matter. While British Airways concentrated power in a single fortress, KLM refined something quieter, not dominance. Flow. Amsterdam Schiphol is busy, but structurally different from Heathrow. It was designed around connections, short transfer times, compact layout, efficient slot utilization. KLM did not try to turn Schiphol into a prestige hub, it turned it into a mechanism. Instead of relying primarily on one premium-heavy corridor like the North Atlantic, KLM distributes traffic across multiple flows. Secondary European cities feed Amsterdam. Passengers connect onward to North America, to Asia, to Africa, to the Middle East. The key difference lies in diversification of dependence. KLM's long-haul network is not built around a single dominant corporate market, it is built on balance. Where BA maximizes yield per seat, KLM maximizes network stability. Fleet decisions reflect this philosophy. KLM operates the Boeing 787-9 and 787-10, efficient, flexible wide-bodies designed for consistency rather than spectacle. It complements them with the A330. And critically, it maintains a large regional network. Embraer E-Jets feeding Schiphol from smaller European markets. And that feed matters, because instead of relying primarily on London's corporate demand, KLM aggregates traffic from dozens of cities: Hamburg, Gothenburg, Bilbao, Krakow. If one market weakens, the network adjusts. If one region slows, traffic is rebalanced. This is not immunity to crises, it is risk distribution. KLM's model assumes volatility. British Airways optimizes for concentration. KLM optimizes for elasticity. And elasticity becomes valuable when demand structures shift. Corporate travel contracts, leisure fills seats, Asia slows, Africa or North America compensate, premium weakens, economy softens the blow. Margins may not always look spectacular, but the structure absorbs shocks more smoothly. KLM is not building a bigger fortress, it is building a web. And in aviation, a web behaves differently from a fortress. It stretches, it redirects flows, it redistributes pressure. The model does not look dramatic, it looks stable. And stability in a volatile market can quietly turn into competitive advantage. The difference between these two models is not visible on a route map. Both airlines fly to New York, both operate modern wide-body aircraft, both belong to global alliances. On the surface, the competition looks symmetrical. Structurally, it is not. British Airways operates inside a slot-constrained fortress. KLM operates inside a network optimized for flows. And that difference shapes how each airline responds to stress. When Heathrow reaches its capacity limits, British Airways cannot simply add frequency to smooth demand. Every slot already has a price. Every schedule change carries an opportunity cost. Growth is constrained by infrastructure. KLM also faces constraints. Schiphol is under environmental and political pressure. But the logic of its network is different. Instead of increasing density on a single corridor, KLM can adjust flows, increase frequency in one mid-sized market, reduce capacity in another, shift aircraft between continents with greater flexibility. Fleet scale also matters. British Airways operates a mix of large long-haul aircraft optimized for premium heavy markets. That works best when business demand remains dense. KLM's fleet is, on average, slightly smaller, allowing it to match capacity more precisely to fluctuating demand. When demand becomes unpredictable, right-sizing beats maximization. There is also a psychological factor rarely discussed openly. The fortress model encourages defending position. The network model encourages adapting position. British Airways must defend Heathrow yields. KLM must defend connectivity. Those priorities shape different strategic responses. In periods of stability, the fortress looks stronger. In periods of uncertainty, flexibility becomes visible. This is not about which airline wins tomorrow. It is about which structure carries less structural risk over a decade. Because aviation rarely collapses dramatically, it changes slowly. Yields gradually compress. Premium demand fluctuates. Fuel efficiency becomes increasingly critical. environmental constraints tighten, and over time, the airline whose model absorbs pressure more naturally begins to look more resilient. KLM is not attacking British Airways directly. It is positioning itself for a market where concentration is no longer automatically rewarded. It is a quieter strategy, but in aviation, quiet structural advantages often matter most. British Airways did not build the wrong airline. It built the right one for a particular era. An era where premium demand was predictable, where corporate corridors defined profitability, where control over a constrained hub meant control over the market. For decades, that model dominated. KLM did not try to copy it. Instead, it refined a structurally different system, a diversified, flow-oriented network built on elasticity rather than concentration. The difference is subtle. In strong years, the fortress produces higher peaks. In unstable years, the web absorbs pressure more gently. This is not a story about immediate victory. It is a story about structural positioning. Because aviation does not reward nostalgia. It rewards alignment with market reality. If premium concentration returns permanently, British Airways' fortress will remain powerful. But if the next decade is defined by volatility, hybrid work, and diversified demand, KLM's network may prove more resilient. The real question is not who looks stronger today. It is whose structure aligns with the world we are entering. And in aviation, structure always wins in the long run.